What got us to thinking that we should get the likes of Michael Kimmelman here is that he wrote a piece a couple of weeks ago, which caught our eye and no doubt yours, about the public's sort of tenacious attachment to public space and what can happen to political leaders, regimes who get in the way, who interrupt that relationship. In Turkey, it turned into kind of a world-changing event, yes?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the biggest upheaval politically for the prime minister there in the 10 years he's ruled.
And what was the issue that precipitated?
Well, it began as an issue about a little park in what's really the central square of Turkey called Taksim. Erdogan, the prime minister, wanted to rip out the park and replace it with a replica of an old Ottoman barracks, which he was going to turn into a mall.
I mean, this kind of thing happens in a lot of cities where a big development project or public work project happens, and people sometimes get upset about it. You know, in Brooklyn, when we had the what's now the Barclays Center, there was a certain amount of protesting,
and
petition
you engaged
gathering.
when Guga Muga came to Prospect Park. You were one of the rioters, right?
Right. Well, I was one of the Twitterers.
Of course, this is one of the interesting things about the public realm you're describing, because no matter how much social media activity there can be about stuff like this, it can be the occupation of a very small space, a physical space by actual bodies, that can really cause a revolution, or in any case cause an enormous kind of a reaction. Look at Zuccotti Park. Zuccotti Park is a small park, and those were a few hundred people, sometimes at the most, that were occupying it. No matter how much stuff was happening on social media, it was their physical presence in that park. And like you're saying about the Atlantic Yards project, you know, people really care about the public realm and public space.
Whose park? Our park!
It's true, who occupies it at that moment owns it in that instant. But then the question really is, you know, who's going to ultimately win the political battles that this raises? The public space becomes common ground for people who have literally common ground for people with overlapping grievances. It's that coming together which actually reveals people to each other as well as themselves, because a lot of people, I think, you know, when you're doing it in virtual space, you really don't know who these people are or what it is. When you see people and you realize, I am not alone, who are these other people? And to see, like in Taksim Square, you had a lot of different mix of people who didn't know that they shared grievances. That's power. That's political power.
Plus the other thing they're saying is, I have skin in the game because I am here at some physical peril.
That's right.
Well, it also, I think, reveals the nature of state power, too, because the only way, finally, to get those people out is by the use of force.
There might have been other ways, but I mean, I think that you're right, and I also think the interesting thing about the way that these places develop is that they evolve as kind of little mini cities. Many of them develop their own, you know, housing areas, medical centers, all this kind of thing. They like simulate what it would be like if they had their own control over a city.
Yeah, or if we were going to start over and civilize space. I love Bryant Park, and every time Fashion Week took that over, I was filled with rage. That's not a fight for my civil rights, but it does raise the question of, is public space public? Who owns it? And who has dominion over it?
And when does the sort of the casual or recreational way that we're used to using it, you know, just walking your dog in the park or going to hear a concert or whatever it is, when does that become something that you feel like you have to defend?
I think at the point, partly it's at the point at which you feel that it's being taken over by, say, private interests. You know, and as you say with Bryant Park, I mean, New York is in a very interesting moment because on the one hand, we've created a lot of interesting new kinds of public spaces. The waterfronts have been recovered. We're adding bike lanes, you know, spaces that the High Line. At the same time, this administration has been very friendly to corporate interests, and those interests are the ones who are going to say, listen, Bryant Park's a beautiful place and we can raise some money for the park. And so this public-private tension, I think, is really very interesting at the moment, and it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in the next administration here.
Thanks a million for coming by and talking.
Sure, my pleasure.
Come back anytime.
Okay.
All right.